Being the parents of twins is a blessing from God. According to believers, God bestowed a unique gift on twins, the opportunity to spend time with one another. These siblings serve as mentors, companions, confidants, and greatest friends to one another. This is the story of two extraordinary couples who will remember their wedding day, not for the fact that they became husband and wife, but for another significant reason. We'll tell you the story precisely as the heroine said. Let's get started. I couldn't have been happier as I walked down the aisle between my two mothers, Rose, the lady who gave birth to me, and Renee Lou, the woman who adopted me from the time. I could remember my identical twin sister, Tiola, or T for short, and I had talked about this day. My only regret was that T, age 20, was unable to witness my wedding since she was waiting outside the door, preparing to marry herself. Eric and Sean Crow, identical twin brothers, were getting married in a double wedding with two ceremonies. Anyone who didn't know who we were probably thought they were seeing things. T and I were dressed similarly in strapless dresses, and the boys were dressed similarly in dark suits with varied ties and waistcoats. Otherwise, no one would be able to tell us apart if we wore slightly different attire. When Eric, 26, spotted me, he said, "You look beautiful." I smiled, recalling how T and I had met him in Sean while helping our local church 8 years before. We hadn't communicated in years and hadn't exchanged more than a few words. But now we were going to be a double couple. "I'm very delighted," I murmured, my gaze fixed on Eric. He returned the smile, knowing that our twins will soon be exchanging vows in front of the same guests. It was a beautiful concept, a storybook wedding, and so, unlike our previous lives, he and I were born to a single mother with 9 children in the Marshall Islands in the Pacific. She was a good mother, yet she struggled to care for all of us. We didn't remember our father because he'd abandoned us when we were quite small. Mom worked as a maid at the major hotel resort on the island. She worked long hours, but did everything she could to make sure we got to school. We're clean and ate well. Our relatives looked after us while she was at work. However, the strain of having to make ends meet while also caring for a big family on her own was beginning to wear her down. Mom was on the verge of having a nervous breakdown when we were 8 years old. That's when she gave up and moved in with her boyfriend, who lived approximately 10 minutes away from our house. We did our best to look after ourselves and our siblings. We had 5 older siblings and 2 younger, but we were still children who needed a mother and father. For approximately 2 months, we were alone. Mom had a grocery shop account, so we could buy food and she'd pay for it. We'd buy rice, corned beef, and hot dogs, and our 2.5-year-old sister, Lily, would cook and look after us. Our mother had been aided by a nice American missionary couple named Terry and Amy Sasser throughout the years, and Lily suggested that we seek them for assistance. They were nice people who were well known on the island, so T, Lily, and our younger brothers, Kenny and Jason, went to the Sassers' house and asked them to take care of us. They welcomed us in. Our other 4 siblings moved in with relatives. At the very least, we now have a home and someone to look after us, she added. I was relieved because I was worried about what would have occurred if we hadn't been brought in. Small children living alone were not safe on the islands. The couple's children were all grown up and living in America when their daughter, Renee, and her husband, Derek Lau, a church worker, arrived to visit 6 months later. Renee and Derek decided they wanted to give us a home the moment they spotted us. "Are you truly willing to let us live with you?" Renee was the one who asked. Renee smiled and hugged me and said, "Yes, honey." Derek and Renee from our mother, who expressed relief that someone was willing to care for us. T and I were soon adopted by the Laus family, who now live in Indianapolis, and the other 3 were adopted by the Sassers. Even though it was a drastic shift from living on the islands, we knew we'd been saved from a terrible destiny in America. Everything was different. He and I were 8 years old and terrified of going to school, since we couldn't communicate in English for the first 2 years, but everyone was extremely friendly. After a few years, we relocated to Kansas City with our family. Our new parents lavished us with affection. T and I weren't the only ones in the family. Mom and Dad have two biological daughters, Sophie, aged 9, and Mykola, 7, as well as 11 adopted children from the Marshall Islands in Ukraine, 5 of whom are special needs. We were overjoyed, and we continue to communicate with our birth mother, calling her on a daily basis. However, on December 29, Dad went home for a meeting and was murdered in a car accident on his way home. He was only 39 years old at the time. We were all stunned. Mom was overcome with grief, but she tried to remain strong for the sake of the rest of us. He and I were heartbroken. Dad had been the most wonderful father we could have imagined. We all rallied around Mom assisting her at the funeral in January and being there for her when she'd break down, she'd sob. I simply miss him. We all done it. 2 years passed in a blur. We sought comfort at the church where Dad had previously served as a minister. We volunteer at the church, the International House of Prayer in Kansas City. As the years went, T and I met Eric and Sean when we were 16 years old. I nudged her and said, "Look, there's another set of twins." I noticed Eric, but I had no idea he was a twin. We took the opportunity to introduce ourselves. "Hello. My name is Kayla, and this is Taylor, my sister," I said. "It's good to meet some other identical twins." Eric grinned. He answered, "Yeah, nice to meet you." They were 21, so they were a lot older than us, but they were kind. We just spoke for a few minutes. Then, in 2010, there was an earthquake in Haiti, and T and I were planning on traveling to help with the church relief team. We were required to take a session on how to assist persons in trouble, and when I saw Eric in the same class, my stomach turned. "How are you doing?" I inquired. I gave him a kind smile. He said, "Good, great to see you." We quickly became friends, and I realized he was an incredible person, intelligent, shy, and with a fantastic sense of humor. He was bummed. Sean wasn't there until she learned that he was unwell and would be joining them on the vacation. Eric and I exchanged a few words, but I had no notion if he liked me or not. I didn't think I stood a chance with him because he was so much older. Our trip to Haiti was canceled 2 weeks later, but Eric sent me a Facebook message. He wrote, "Do you want to get a coffee sometime?" I was completely taken aback. He asked me out. He's asking me out. I let out a street. It was the first time I'd ever been on a date. I assumed Eric wanted to meet up with his brother and tea for coffee, so I said we'd both be there. Eric told Sean he had to come since he was going to be there. I found out afterwards. Sean was shy, and while liking tea, he took a long time to break out of his shell as we exchanged glances. We informed them about our lives on the islands and our adoption together. When we were done, Eric commented, "You've gone through a lot. Can you tell me where you're from?" She inquired. They claimed that they were originally from North Carolina, but had moved around a lot due to their father's military service. They had arrived in Kansas City a few weeks after we had, and they'd both come to study at our Church East Bible College. We all got along swimmingly and spoke till the wee hours of the morning. Eric asked me out again a few days later, and Sean asked my sister out. He and I both knew right away that these were the men we wanted to marry because they were both kind and honorable. T and I have quite diverse tastes, despite the fact that we're twins. Eric planned to take me out to dinner on January 26, 2011. It came as a complete shock. He drove me 4 to 5 minutes from our house to a lovely bed and breakfast. He rented out the first level in its entirety. Wow, this is impressive. What's going on? As we entered, I inquired. I was perplexed as to why he had booked the entire restaurant for dinner. Eric simply smiled. "I have something for you," he said. Halfway through the meal, he returned with a tiny bag from the kitchen. "It has to be a ring," says the narrator.
Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, Please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos, hit the subscribe button, and if you have something to say, please leave a comment.